Hello, it's your girl Dr. Charm and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome to my channel. If this is the first time seeing my face or knowing of my existence, please feel free to stick around and click that subscribe button. Happy Monday! That means it's Crime and Conviction Day, and if you don't know what that is a series on my channel where I summarize the life, crime, and conviction of either a Jamaican that has committed a crime abroad or somewhere in the Caribbean, or a Jamaican that has committed a crime here, or crime in general that has happened in Jamaica. If that is not your cup of tea, that is fine. I do have other videos on my channel that you might find interesting. However, if this is your first time here and you are interested in this kind of content, please feel free to check out my other videos under crime and conviction. Last week I spoke about the first ever recorded serial killer in Jamaica, Mr. Louis Hutchinson. Today we will be talking about Lee Boyd Malvo, who is also popularly known as one of the DC snipers. As per usual, I will be linking my sources down below in my description. But for this particular story, I did get most of my information from his book, which I did read. It was extra interesting. You guys can read it also, but of course I got it from other sources and interviews and all these wonderful things. So let us jump right in. Lee Boyd Malvo was born in Kingston, Jamaica to a dressmaker and a mason. His parents had an over 15-year age gap relationship, his mother being 21 and his father being 37. Lee described his father as a kind person who only punished him once, unlike his mother. His father's love was simple. However, on the flip side, his father was a gambler and a womanizer. There were many instances of abuse, whether it was Lee's mother towards him, his mother towards his father, or vice versa. When Lee was 5 years old, his father left for Grand Cayman for a job opportunity. When Yuna, Lee's mother, found out that Leslie, Lee's father, was living with a woman in Grand Cayman, she packed up everything from the house they shared in Kingston and moved to St. Anne. While living in St. Anne, Lee was abused by his babysitter, who was an older woman. Lee and his mother then moved from St. Anne back to Kingston after his mother and his aunt had a blow up over a business that they started together. While living in Kingston, close to Waterhouse, Lee witnessed all sorts of violence and carnage, the first of which was the killing of a policeman right in front of Lee's eyes when he was 5 years old. Lee moved around quite a lot, from Kingston to St. Anne, back to Kingston, back to St. Catherine, back to St. Anne, St. Elizabeth. He was all over the place. He also moved from house to house, from his aunts to his cousins to his grandmother and family friends. Around this time, Lee's mother moved to St. Martin. She would pop up in Jamaica occasionally to check up on Lee, and he would constantly write her letters. She would send money for Lee for the first few months until the payments would stop, and then Lee would have to be housed elsewhere, and the cycle would repeat itself. Yuna had a bad temper and would savagely beat Lee, verbally and physically, beatings that would leave him with scars and even dislocated his fingers on 2 separate occasions. He also faced abuse in these many houses that he stayed. He found his aunt in Mandeville to be even worse than his mother. Lee, however, had a smart mouth that would sometimes lead to some of these beatings. He was sexually abused by both his older female cousins when he was 9 years old. He was intelligent in school, but due to circumstances, he would often fall short. He passed his exams for York Castle High School. It wasn't all bad. He eventually landed at a family member's house called Simone. She was an educator. She moved him from York Castle High School to Spalding's High, where she worked, because it was a shorter travel distance and Lee would not be required to get up as early. Therefore, he could put more time towards his studies. He was astonished by her parenting style. She was not the type of person to beat children, rather she would speak with him. He described living with her as the perfect life. Unfortunately, not everything lasts forever. On one of his mother's visits, she took him away and told him never to contact Simone again. Apparently, there was some form of jealousy on her end because he did not want to leave. He was transferred back to Yarkassa High School and he was left at a boarding house. His mother returned to St. Martin. When Lee's father was working in Grand Cayman, he only had the opportunity to see Lee 3 times. At 13 years of age, Lee had not seen his father for many years. His father did eventually return to Jamaica. While living in this boarding house, Lee snuck off to see his father in Kingston in hopes of a new home. Lee updated his father but did not state his intentions, nor did his father offer. However, he did give him a few dollars and sent him packing. He didn't even walk him to the bus stop. This crushed Lee. His mother was deported from St. Martin for visa fraud. She returned to Jamaica, retrieved Lee, and they moved once again. While living with his mother, Lee attempted suicide. He fashioned rope out of a bed sheet and tied it to a mango tree and called his mother's attention, saying, "You won't ever have to beat me again." Lee's mother and a neighbor tried to talk him out of it for about 4 hours. He did jump but was saved by the neighbor. He did contemplate suicide again but stated he lost the courage. His mother left once again, this time Antigua. He begged his mother to stay, but she said that she needed to work to provide for him. At 15 years old, Lee became withdrawn from the world. He was once considered a chatterbox but suddenly became quiet and would stay in the classrooms during lunch. His teacher, Mrs. Maxwell, noticed his change and took him in. At the Maxwells, he was treated well. He had his own room. His grades improved and he was comfortable. But once again, he was uprooted and moved to Antigua. In January 2000, Lee was left completely alone when his mother returned to St. Martin. Lee would resell CDs, and when that failed to earn him enough money, he would steal things and resell them and use the money for school, to feed himself, and even to pay bills including rent. Lee eventually fell short. He avoided the landlord by sleeping over classmates' house and sleeping in abandoned buildings. In July, when the semester ended, his mother sent him a plane ticket to St. Martin. Unfortunately, his mother was scammed by a man that promised her illegal documents to get her into the US. They then returned to Antigua, and this is where she met John Mohammed in October of 2000. John faked illegal documents, and $3,500 after, Yuna was in the United States in November 2000. Yuna left Lee by himself once again, but John took him in and introduced him to his friends and associates as his son. Lee was treated like one of John's children. John had 3 other children aged 11, 9, and 7. John listened to him and valued what he had to say. Lee appreciated this because he was coming from a children had to be seen, not heard environment. Lee was even converted to Islam. In John, Lee found a father figure. John Mohammed was an American and a military man. He had 3 children with his ex-wife, but when his marriage started to sour, he illegally took his children to Antigua, where he started his fake document business. In May 2001, Lee, John, and his 3 children arrived in the US. After about 3 weeks in the US, living with John, Lee was brought to see his mother. A decision was made that Lee would be staying with John, however, his mother protested the next day. He left regardless. Yuna called John consistently and threatened to call the police, claiming that Lee was kidnapped. Lee was returned to his mother. He enrolled in school and his grades were looking up. His mother did try to bridge the divide that was caused by many years of separation. However, it was too late. Lee was withdrawn and he only spoke when spoken to, like he was taught. He would continue to speak with John Mohammed in secrecy. By this time, on John's end, his 3 children were taken away from him and he lost his parental rights. This angered John. At 16 years old, Lee ran away to live with John. A few weeks later, because of his immigrant status, Lee and his mother were detained and reunited. Lee spent a few weeks in a juvenile delinquency facility and was released on bond. About 2 days after being released, he ran away for the second time to live with John. For a few months, John and Lee rode around the states, randomly robbing and killing people. John would evaluate Lee's crimes. He was training him. He would lecture Lee on how to be detached. Lee's routine consisted of working out and practicing his marksmanship. 2 days before Lee's 17th birthday, John tested him. He was sent to kill a friend of his ex-wife. Lee was instructed to shoot anyone who answered the door. Unfortunately, it was the target's 21-year-old niece that was shot in the face. This was Lee's first killing. John was watching Lee, and after the killing, he said what he did was perfect. This night was described as the night that Lee Boyd Malvo died. October 2002 was the start of a killing spree. John and Lee began mapping escape routes and areas for their random attacks. They refashioned a blue Chevy Caprice that John had bought a few months earlier. The frame that separated the trunk from the back seat was removed. The inside of the trunk was painted the same shade as blue as the outside of the vehicle. The trunk of the car was held tightly with bungee cords to prevent it from popping all the way open. This way, it was opened about 2 inches wide. A small hole was cut just under the key lock. This was their sniper vehicle. John set out to kill 5 persons every day for a month. Targets would be chosen at random. John would take shots from inside the trunk of the car, where Lee would sit at the passenger seat and be the lookout and give John the clear to shoot. Lee was ordered to take shots from outside of the vehicle. People were scared. This caused mass hysteria. 6 persons were dead in less than 24 hours. At the end of this 3 weeks, 10 persons were killed and 3 were injured, ages 13 to 72. John impulsively left notes on the scene of several of the crimes, and Lee would make taunting phone calls to the police. A fingerprint was found on a magazine at one of the crime scenes matching Lee's. One of John's ex-army buddies called to give information to the police as he had suspected John. On October 24th, 2002, the pair were found sleeping in their sniper vehicle and were arrested. During the trial, Lee testified against John. He was the final witness. He described in detail each of the shootings. John acted as his own lawyer and referred to Lee as son, refusing to call him by his name. On March 10th, 2004, Lee was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Other charges were laid against Lee in connection to crimes and killings not related to the sniper shootings. Being 17 at the time, Lee could not face the death penalty. On November 8th, 2006, Lee was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. On November 10th, 2019, at age 48, John was executed by lethal injection. It is said that the real reason behind these killings is so that John could have gotten to his ex-wife, killed her, then played the grieving father to receive his children. Lee did not know John's true intentions. So we have a few updates. In a 2013 interview, Lee confessed that he was sexually abused by John. Lee's life sentence was overturned, being that he was a juvenile at the time and he will be eligible for parole in 2024 in Virginia. Not quite sure what will happen as it regards to other states, because he was charged for other crimes in other states, including the 6 consecutive life sentences in Maryland. In 2011, Lee wanted to change his name, but that request was denied. Lee got married in March 2020, just the other day, and he got a wedding ceremony in prison. He even was allowed to hold his bride's hand. There is a movie called Blue Caprice made in 2013 based on all of these events. Lee wrote a book called Diary of a DC Sniper, which I did read, and I must tell you guys, if you have access to this book, I read it on Kindle, please read it. It is very interesting. It struck some points for me, and it was really an interesting read. His mother also has an interview that I will be linking down below. I couldn't even watch the first 20 minutes of it, but then I had to retract myself, and I'm just like, girl, you're doing it for crime and conviction. Just reel and come again and watch it. I didn't watch it to the end. Like the last 20 minutes, I started to doze off. It was a horrible interview. She did not talk about the abuse. She made herself out to be a victim. Any chance she got, she bashed his father. They even posed a question towards her saying if she had the chance to not leave and stay home, and this woman's answer was, I don't know. Anyways, so if you guys want to check out his mother's interview, just click down in the description. Like, it was an awful interview, but you guys can go and watch it and make the assumption for yourself. Now, the whole situation is just messy. I have so much thought on this situation, especially due to the fact that I read the book and I saw it through his eyes. The way that he still described his father, it's just heartbreaking. And then his mother was abusive. And this is not a story that I have not heard before. I've heard this story before, where mothers literally take their anger out on the child. I'm not putting the blame only on Lee's mother. His father was also there to blame, because when his father returned to Jamaica from Grand Cayman, he could have retrieved his son. He chose not to. To be honest, Lee was just young and easy to manipulate. If it was a case where they stayed here in the ghetto and his mom was still, you know, back and forth, he probably would have become a statistic. His mother wasn't a constant in his life. He was moved from house to house. So these persons, his cousins, his aunt, they weren't constant in his life. So finally, he has someone that is constant in his life, someone that appears to care. He's going to not want to disappoint this person. And this is exactly what happened. And John, being intelligent and being the person that he was, he saw this need in Lee and he manipulated him. And I really and truly feel pity for Lee. John was the mastermind and Lee was the tool. That is the way that I saw it. I feel as if he's very, very remorseful. And to show growth, some of the victims have forgiven him. I know that was a lot, and I know that you guys have some opinions on this case, so just leave them down in the comment section. I love to hear them. I want to hear them. And that is all I have for you today. If you like the video, remember to like the video. You can share it with your friends. I will be linking all my sources in the description box if you want to read up on this case for yourself. And as per usual, remember to be a beautiful soul, not just a gorgeous face. And until next time, mwah, bye. And a dressmaker. Girl, dressmaker, like that not sound right. That sound like English and the patois.